A pro-Palestine protest is scheduled for Armistice Day. Marks and Spencer upset everyone with a Christmas advert, and The Simpsons ditches one of its most famous jokes. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics, and we'll be covering some of the usual antics from those culture warriors who have really outdone themselves this week, even by their own demented standards. Coming up on the show tonight, feminist writer, filmmaker and activist Vaishnavi Sundar will be here to discuss her upcoming documentary Behind the Looking Glass. We'll discuss a worrying case in which a trans police officer hounded a free speech campaigner with abusive messages before eventually being dismissed last week. Freedom in the Arts. That's a new organisation designed to help artists who find themselves and their work cancelled. Well, I'm going to be speaking to one of the co-founders, Rosie Kay, and the campaigner Billboard Chris will be here to tell us about his work travelling the world, exposing gender identity ideology. And of course, I've got a wonderful panel here who are going to answer some questions from our rather attractive studio audience. My guests tonight are Cressida Wetton and Josh Howie. Welcome both. So I like the contrast between you two because you've dressed up for the event and you've gone kind of ghetto.
I've got...
I mean, look at that.
I represent the street.
I've always thought that about you.
Says in the poshest voice possible.
And you look very well turned out.
Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew.
How dare you? Yeah.
No, that's all there is to say about that. Let's talk to the audience instead, because I'm bored of my panel already. We've got a question from Edward. Where's Edward? Hi, Edward.
Are white supremacists to blame for Palestinian deaths?
OK, so that's quite a heavy start to the show. But I know what this is about, Edward. This is women's organisation Sisters Uncut. Now, they are claiming that the same white supremacist patriarchy oppressing feminists is also, quote, murdering Palestinians. Josh, this is one of these, you would describe them as intersectional groups that sort of find these connections all over the place, sort of lump it together in a very unnuanced way, don't they?
The idea is that, until we're all... Nobody's free until we're all free.
Right.
So they're banding together trans ideology, which includes, I guess, queer, gay people, obviously, and women as well.
Yes.
And they're going and they're banning that with the Palestinian cause. And the irony is, of course, that in a place like Gaza, with Hamas, a terrorist organisation, an Islamic terrorist organisation, all of those things would be, banned. They would be murdered for. So I mean, it's ridiculous. And the other thing is, when they say white supremacy or whatever, it's an American idea that they've tried to transpose across the world. Israel, it doesn't apply to. The majority of Israeli Jews are from the Middle East and they look like Palestinians, so it's a ridiculous idea.
Yes, so it's like you say, the Americanism, I think, is exactly right. But this is a group that have gathered in London quite a lot to sort of put this together. But this group have already got in trouble before, haven't they, Cressida?
Well, they're very... I mean, first of all, when you hear the name, feminism... What's it? Feminists Uncut? Sisters Uncut. Don't you think it was an FGM charity? Excellent. Well done then. And then it turns out it's not that at all. They've got all these other things, as you've just said, grouped together.
Well, they actually defended that trans activist who called on people to punch women, right? They defended that.
Isn't it? I mean, the standard feminist now is currently saying, let's have women's prisons be women only.
Yes.
So it's quite a departure from that.
It sort of disturbs me with all of these protests that I've seen. A lot of the people seem to be reducing everything to very simplistic binary narratives, and it looks to me like a lot of them just don't understand what the issues, not even a little bit.
No, not at all. And they're absolutely unwilling to learn. And once they feel like they're comfortable in their space on the right side of history, God forbid someone comes along and says, well, what about this fact?
So why is that? Because this seems to be the case with every political or ideological dispute these days. Everything. It has to be reduced to good versus evil, and there's nothing in between.
Because my theory is that the left or the far left don't like reading.
But maybe.
No, I genuinely think that. I think they don't like reading. I think they're lazy. I think they just want someone to tell them, you're good.
Yes.
And just like with the trans thing, like this, you see the same pattern repeated over and over again. Everybody goes, yeah, of course we want equal rights for everybody, and of course everything should be fair. And we go, yeah, great. Then they stop thinking because they've made their position and that. But as soon as someone says, well, actually, that might equate to you know, female rights might be affected. And then in this case, they're meant to be a feminist organisation. Well, guess who got raped and murdered on October 7th in Israel?
Exactly. I find this all the time. I had Andrew Boff on the show, and he was talking about gender identity ideology, saying it wasn't a thing. And I explained to him what is meant by the phrase, and he had never heard it before. He clearly didn't know the first thing about it. And I was genuinely surprised by it.
He doesn't watch Free Speech Nation.
He doesn't watch Free Speech Nation. That's the most egregious aspect of that story. But, like, I don't mind people disagreeing, but I'm always shocked when people haven't done some basic reading on the subject.
Done any basic reading and then be so confident that you start an organisation. I mean, that's extraordinary.
Well, that's it, absolutely. OK, we'll move on to another question now from Roderick. Roderick, hello.
Hello. Why is The Simpsons retiring one of its best gags?
Yes. Now, are you a fan of The Simpsons, Roderick?
Yes.
You are.
And you know, Simpsons more than
no, I totally agree with you, because the late Simpsons, they have lost it, haven't they? But in the early days, Homer used to grab Bart by the throat. He used to say, "Why are you little?" and grab the child by the throat. And I never took that as inciting violence against children. I mean, I don't know, you've got children.
I mean, look, the joke was he was a bad parent.
Right, there we go.
Like the clip now, he sort of says, oh, I'm not like that anymore. Well, the point was, when it came out 30 years ago, people weren't just strangling their kids. The point was, he was a terrible parent, and that was the joke. And he says, oh, things have changed now. You know what's changed is the ability to make a joke about bad parents.
Yeah.
That's what's changed, and that's the saddest thing.
I mean, there's all sorts of ways that the Simpsons has sort of cleaned its act up, sanitised its act according to modern sensibilities.
And become not funny.
They got rid of the character Apu, for instance. They've done all sorts of stuff.
But look at South Park, which is just absolutely killing it still.
Yes.
Being totally irrelevant. This week had a genius episode which just totally blew woke ideology out of the water.
Yes.
They've always been on it.
They had a good... Yes,
and
South
they don't
Park...
try to answer the questions, do they? They always say that we're here to hold up a mirror.
Yeah.
Not to tell you what to do.
Yes, exactly.
We won't tell you not to strangle your kids.
But was anyone seriously thinking that was risky to have Homer strangle his kid?
I hope they weren't. I don't think anybody copied Marge's hair either.
No.
I don't know.
Although they probably should have.
Well, actually, having said that, blue hair's in now,
It's a good look.
Yeah.
It's a good... But, like, Roderick makes the point that the early Simpsons are much better, and it's true. You know, they've kind of just lost it, haven't they?
Yeah, maybe it's time to...
Just retire the whole show.
That's quite a violent thing to say.
Seems quite extreme, but yeah, you know, fair enough. OK, we're going to move on to a question from Alan, where